So today, I thought let's extend the conversation that we're having yesterday. Yesterday, we were looking at how religious systems shape our thinking, right? And today, we're going to look at how modern systems replace the religious systems and still direct our thinking and shape our thinking, right? And once you leave a high control environment like Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc., that's just the start of your journey. That's where you still have to learn how to get out of the system because it doesn't stop operating on you once you leave. It still operates on you. And despite that operating on you, modern systems today still will be operating on you. And my goal with my work is to make sure that I help people to see the systems that are operating on them so they can regain control, right? There are going to be a million systems that are operating on you. You have to be conscious about it and regain control of your life to consciously make decisions on the systems that you want to operate in your life or to take advantage of the systems so that you can direct your life the way you want to. And today we're going to focus on modern systems. Modern systems still exert authority, they still shape meaning, they still create obedience to them, and through those mechanisms, create a system that shapes our thinking. So, when we say that the system of religion doesn't stop operating after you leave, what do we mean? Well, the Jehovah's Witness religion, or the Mormon religion, or any other religion, the training that it does psychologically is it shapes your reflexes. Like I mentioned earlier, when I do videos on Jehovah's Witnesses, you will see people in the comments who are Jehovah's Witnesses reacting, reflecting immediately, right? Because you're trained, your reflexes are trained, right? Your psychological, emotional makeup is trained to react to certain things in a certain way, right? That's how the shaping of thinking works. And that is reinforced through the doctrines, it's through disfellowshipping, punishment, incentives, and those kinds of things. So if you behave a certain way, you will be rewarded in the organization. If you behave differently, you will be punished, and the punishment may mean you will not see your family ever again, right? For some people, so those reflexes are still operating in you. You still have those reflexes in you, right? I remember earlier on when I left Jehovah's Witnesses and I actually started deconstructing and leaving, I realized I was still reacting like a Jehovah's Witness, but not to Jehovah's Witness type content, right? When something would happen, I would either be afraid to engage with the information because I was trained to not trust any piece of information unless it comes from trusted sources, right? And so the way I engaged with information, just information, right? Learning about things, was a lot of fear around it, right? So when you hear people talking in the African tradition, witch doctors, sangomas, that sort of thing, you approach it with a level of fear. Um, and those reflexes are still in you, so they're still operating on you. And in the words of Oliver Mtukudzi and in the words of Jay-Z, you may leave the ghetto, but the ghetto will not leave you, right? You can take the boy out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of the boy. I think you can take the ghetto out of the boy, and that's what this video is about today. So modern systems replace religious systems, right? Once you leave a religious system, you're faced with a modern system. And if you look at workplaces, you look at hustle culture, productivity culture, social media, right? Marketing, corporate culture, right? Democracy, governments, politics, things that are within our lives and that govern a lot of what happens in our lives, you will see these dynamics at play. So, authority, right? Who possesses authority today? And basically, anyone who decides what's normal, anyone who decides what's cool, anyone who decides what's excellent, anyone who sets the standard for everybody to follow. So, you can look in the corporate, the workspace culture, it could be thought leaders, people who set policies in government and things like that, right? It could be business leaders. They sort of set the standard for everyone to try and achieve, right? And they often influence productivity and hustle culture, right? That says you must work 18 hours a day to be deserving of the moniker of a hard worker. You must work hard to get your goals and your dreams. You must sacrifice. You must do this, right? And they set the standard of what's normal. So they become the authority figures, right? When you're doing your when you look at marketing, right, they want to establish credibility and authority in a space. That's why they do awards, recognition awards, and things like that. These are all authority creating um, structures in our modern society. Social media, people who decide what's cool, people who decide what's relevant, people who decide who set the standard, who set the topics, right, of discussion, the tone, and everything. Those people become authority figures. You'll see on social media people sort of just following the trend. The algorithm is another authority in today's world. The algorithm sort of sets a standard. In the past, the algorithm was searching for community, so it was about sharing your content to people that are subscribed to your content. Today, who you're subscribed to doesn't matter. You're going to see content from random people all over the place. So auditing your feed becomes more and more difficult, right? Because it's no longer about um, subscribers, it's about interest. If they think you're interested in this topic, they're going to send it to you. The algorithm will always reward negativity, for example. So there's a push for people to be a little bit more shocking, a little bit more negative, reacting, that sort of thing. And algorithm becomes an authority because if you want your content, your message, your voice to go out there, you're going to have to obey this authority that says, this is how you do it, right? How the mechanics are made up, sure, we can discuss that, but we're just talking about what actually happens. We've established authority. Now let's look at how meaning is controlled, right? Again, in today's world, the nuance and complexity is removed because messaging cuts across, right? Messaging is promoted. So sound bites and that sort of thing. Every business that's trying to market out there is looking for the sound bite. Every politician who's marketing themselves out there is looking for a sound bite. If you go out into the market and you try to speak with meaning and nuance, right, it will be a lot more difficult than somebody who comes in with a simple message, right? You look at uh, elections. Last year, many countries Last year, many countries in the world were having elections, and in those elections, you saw people who were repeating a specific message started winning. And before that, people were repeating a different message were winning, right? And it was about the messaging. Are you talking about affordability? Are you talking about immigration? And immigration here in South Africa is a big topic. Immigration in the UK and Europe is a big topic. Immigration in the US is a big topic, right? Immigration all over the world is a big topic. And maybe I'll do a separate video on that, um, the movement of people around the world and what's causing it. But today, let's talk about the messaging that people have to sort of stick to. It removes nuance. It discourages thinking. The moment, if you watch, let's say, for example, let's pick something silly, right? If you watch dating shows and that sort of thing, if you are nuanced, you're seen as boring. It's like, what is he saying? What's going on? What's she talking about? But if you come in with a quick, snappy soundbite, or you just repeat what people say that they think is cool, right? You will get a lot more traction, right? And people feel pressure to play that character and to play that role, right? And some people do it unconsciously. Again, this is what we're saying about taking your power back. You have to make the decision whether you want to play that game or not, and if playing that game is going to be beneficial to you. It might be beneficial to you financially, but it might be damaging in terms of your psychology and your emotional makeup. So you have to make that decision for yourself, right? There is no they, right? They is you just listening to the system, the programming. When people say society told me to, well, it's the things that are rewarded, right? So if we look at incentives and punishment, men and women tend to have overlapping needs and desires, right? Psychologically and emotionally, but different things are rewarded, right? So for men, for example, you are rewarded if you say, I'm a provider, I'm a protector. If you're a woman, you are rewarded if you say, I'm a nurturer, right? And the shadow side of it is that for men, they can then use providing and protecting as replacement for presence, right? Instead of being actually present in your children's lives, in your wife's, in your relationship, in your marriage, whatever. I make money. I provide money. I provide this life that we have. For women, on the other hand, as nurturers, the shadow side is that the expectation is you are still going to hold the relationship together, even if it's not serving you. Even if I'm hurting you, I expect you to still stay in the relationship and hold it down, right? And again, the things that I'm saying are not new because there's specific messaging that you already know about this, right? Um, but there's a little bit of nuance that goes on there. But coming down to it, those incentives, right, for a man to feel like he's worthy, to be seen, to be respected in his community, and in a large part by his wife or by women, he has to embody this: I'm a provider, I'm a protector. Again, it's okay to play that game, but you have to choose. What does being a provider mean? What does being a protector mean? You will see young men and old men alike playing this protector role and embodying these rather aggressive, abrasive personalities and postures and ending up in unnecessary fights, right? Unnecessary violence because they are trying to embody this: I'm a protector, right? So you have to choose which game you're playing and how you're going to play that game, right? But these are the incentives that are used to create obedience in our lives. And the damaging aspect of these modern control systems, especially around obedience, is that self policing sort of replaces external enforcement. Sometimes you have to set boundaries, but you will adapt yourself to fit in, right? And that's where it's important to understand what system is being acted upon you in that situation, in that environment, and make a decision of whether you want to play or not, right? Because if you are now going to change who you are and adapt yourself to an environment that is not serving you, that is harming you, you're basically replicating what happened in your early childhood or in whatever high control environment you may have come from, right? So there's a push to say just fit in, right? Um, drive this car that drive a car that looks a certain way, wear clothes that look a certain way, spend this money on this brand and that sort of thing to fit in, right? In other environments, it's different things, right? And you got to figure out if the cost of fitting in or self adaptation is worth it. If you're sacrificing external boundaries, external enforcement, at some point you have to enforce your boundaries and say, these are my boundaries. Doesn't matter what the situation is, doesn't matter who it is, right? These are my boundaries. And whoever you make exceptions for, you make that consciously. So, how does that now relate to our thinking? As we've talked about in some of the examples, you know, aspects of our thinking end up with decision paralysis. You know you want to do that thing. You want to start that business. You want to, you know, start your family. You want to, you know, walk up to that girl, walk up to that guy, whatever it is, the things that you want to do in your life, but you keep waiting. Uh, you're hesitating, right? That again, that theme of indecision, not trusting yourself to make that decision and take the bold steps that you need to move forward, is because you're trying to figure out if you're fitting in, if you're doing the right thing. If I do this, my life is over. I'm going to be mocked. I'm going to be punished by society, right? And it starts shaping your thinking. The same way for me in Jehovah's Witnesses, um, you know, I had to change how I thought to be able to fit in, to be able to get baptized so I can get my dad off my back, right? And things of that nature. So in today's world, you see a lot of indecision, right, around so many things. And this applies even at a societal level. You'll see governments, you'll see municipalities, you'll see communities not being able to make bold decisions that are in their best interest, right? Because it's kind of like we're waiting to see what happens. Communities in South Africa are so diverse, but we're having arguments about things that don't affect each other. A community in Toyando doesn't need policy consensus with a community in KZN or East London or Northern Cape, right? Community in Toyando needs to make decisions that work for them. The municipalities, the provincial governments, they need to make decisions that are uh, impactful for them. But because they're waiting to see what the authority figures say and if this is going to work, how the community is going to see this, how this, and all those games, um, there's this indecision. So it applies at a societal level or a community level, but it's most impactful at an individual level in your life. Outsourcing judgment is a big one, right? A lot of times people don't make a decision and say, I like that, I'm going for it. I don't trust that, I'm not going to follow it. They say, well, they say it's the right thing to do. They say this is the medicine to take. This is the thing to do, right? But you have your own internal judgment that's telling you something. You're outsourcing and say, okay, let me just trust what they say, right? Lack of trusting your intuition. Your intuition is there for a reason, to protect you, right? Might get it wrong, don't get me wrong, but learning and cultivating that trust and that safety within your own voice, even if you're wrong according to external voices, is something that you're going to have to cultivate to allow you to think. In those moments where you have to make decisions, you need to allow yourself the space to think, right? To delay the decision enough for you to think, for you to process emotionally what's going on. Are these triggers that are coming up from my childhood, from my high control environments that I need to quieten or appease or acknowledge, right? So I can actually think in this moment and make a decision that works for me, right? But that's how modern systems shape our thinking and how we can regain control. So, how do we then actually go about regaining control? What does that journey look like, right? A lot of these productivity and hustle culture people, even the spiritual hustlers, will say, these are the things you need to do. You need to manifest. You need to do affirmations. I believe the biggest thing you have to do is to be aware. Just start by being aware of what's actually going on, right? Just being aware of the internal triggers that are happening within you, being aware of the internal pressures you have, being aware of what games that you're playing. Are you solving for safety in every environment that you're in? Are you just looking to feel safe? Are you solving for status, right? You're comparing yourself with others. Understand your internal game and just be aware of it. Because once you have that awareness, the work starts to happen on its own, right? So the first step before you do anything is to just raise awareness and be conscious about what are you doing. So what does that look like? You're just noticing. You notice when you got triggered by something. Why did I get triggered? How did I, right? You're not fixing anything, you're just noticing. Just start by noticing. You gotta understand yourself. What's the Sun Tzu quote? Uh, to understand your foe, you gotta understand yourself, or something like that. I'm forgetting now. It's been a long time. But you get the point, right? You just notice those little things, those little interactions. Every interaction is a blessing. If somebody does something that disrespects you in a moment, that's a blessing. That's a time for you to be able to notice, why did I feel disrespected? What about that was disrespectful to me? What does that say about the framing of who I am? If somebody says, you're an idiot, and I find that disrespectful, I can notice that being my intellect being challenged is something that I have an insecurity around. So I feel disrespected if somebody says that, right? If somebody says something about your physical features, you're ugly, right? Notice that. That hurts. Okay, that's painful. Just notice these things, right? You don't have to fix anything, just notice it. You'll start to see what actually triggers you because there's a lot of things that people say and do that you don't even notice because they're not important, right? If somebody says, oh, you're not the best gymnast, it's not gonna make a difference to your life because it's not something that's important to you. But if somebody says you're ugly and you react to that at least internally and you feel something, there's something in you that you need to notice, that you need to pay attention to, and that's going to be the most important work. Being aware of who you are and the map inside you, right? Your psychology, your emotional makeup, right? Your thought patterns, right? Notice how that emotion actually feels physically in your body. Notice the thought patterns that happen because you'll start to see a pattern at some point that the moment somebody says something like that, I feel this, I have this kind of sensation, and these thoughts start going, right? Just notice that internally. That's a big part, the biggest part of sort of regaining control. Then you can start finding solutions. There are plenty of solutions. Each one will be different for each situation based on your life. Then you can go about trying to find those solutions. Another thing to notice or to identify is the adopted language, right? So here's a big one for me personally. When I was deconstructing from Jehovah's Witnesses, I noticed I struggled particularly with marketing in my business. Every business I'd done up until that point, I'd only grown it by word of mouth. I'd never marketed my business. And I always looked at social media people and said, oh no, they're just um, seeking attention. This system of um, the system of trying to get likes, is beneath me, that sort of thing, right? And the training was, as a Jehovah's Witness, I was trained to not be part of the system of things. So anytime I encountered a situation that made me uncomfortable, I would start running that same thought pattern and say, oh no, I don't want to be part of that system, right? Even when you realize that system uh, is something that you need. You need to put the messaging out there, put the word out there, grow your business, etc. Right? So I had to overcome that. So identifying the adopted language, that is at least your internal language, but also notice the language that you speak, because the language has a big, big part of determining how you feel, how you experience things, right? So, so for example, if somebody does something today or something happens right now, right? Or if you're feeling something and you're down, the language you use for it, and for many people, is what they experience. So if you say, I'm sad, if you say, I'm depressed, you start experiencing depression, right? Um, if you say, I'm happy, I'm joyous, you start experiencing that, right? But at the core of it, what you're experiencing is a low energy, low vibration experience. It might manifest itself in different ways to actually try to imagine, try to embody yourself and be like, what is this feeling? What am I feeling? Is my heart beating fast? Are my thoughts scrambled? Right? Emotionally, I feel a heaviness. Is it a low energy? Is it a heaviness? Is it a breaking? Does it feel like your heart is being split in two? Actually the sensation of what you're feeling is then labeled sadness, labeled depression, labeled joy, right? And the language that comes with that is what people end up feeling. Oh, I'm depressed. And they start labeling their feelings as depression or whatever it is. Not saying the experience isn't real, but I'm saying the language we use to label the experience for most of us dictates to a large part how we experience what we experience, right? So the language is important. And, so notice what happens with you, your thought patterns, your emotional. So you're really trying to understand what's happening inside. Then you're understanding the language you're using to process this, how you're expressing this, right? What language you're using, the messaging, right? Are you repeating certain messages internally or externally? So language is a big, big part of it. So great. I hope that's helpful, right? And I hope that you find some value in this and that you're able to use this to move forward in your life. And whatever happened, whatever's happening today, um, it's your responsibility to figure out how to react, how to respond, and what to do about it, right? And a lot of these interactions, these things, are blessings because they give you the chance, the opportunity to understand what's happening inside, right? If somebody never triggers you, provokes you, right, surprises you, you're never going to know what actually surprises you, what actually, right, bothers you, and things like that. So these are blessings, if you look at it that way. It's a blessing that I've come out of a high control religion. Why? Because it's now making me think like this, right? I apply this to a lot of my life and I'm able to pick and choose which games I participate in. When I notice that, oh, I'm unconsciously playing this game, do I want to play that game? Is it a game that benefits me? How do I make this game beneficial for me, right? Um, and that's how I apply my life, or that's how I'm moving forward in my life, right? And I'm just sharing this journey with you guys. And I want to know for you guys, if you've noticed a voice in your life that's the loudest, that's sort of, whose voice are you listening to? What are you experiencing as the authority in your life, the dominant authority? I have some theories about the dominant authorities, but I'm curious to hear what other people say it is for them. And we'll maybe see if we can get some value out of it. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to focus on finance, right? I do accounting. I'm an accounting firm, so that's a big part of my life. So it's a big part of what I'm going to be talking about. So we'll talk about the financial systems and how they shape our own finances, right? Um, and applying that to finance. Anyways, cheers, guys. I'll see you again tomorrow.